Yo, yo, yo. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cultured Podcast. I'm very excited about this episode. Number one, I'm excited to have my compadre Jade back with me. Last time I was rolling solo. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
I
But
watched
yeah,
it.
it wasn't bad, but it's very cool to have my peeps back. How you doing, Jade? How was your time off?
Man, I'm doing great. Rested and recharged. I was watching. It was like 3 a.m. and where was it? Amsterdam, and I'm like laying in the hotel room, like earbuds in, trying not to wake my wife up. And I was like, "Yo, the episode's going well," and I miss Love Jones, so that's always tough. I'm good for all those sappy movies like that.
Man, well, how was Amsterdam? Like, I know you went to Ireland. I know you went to Amsterdam.
Yeah. Amsterdam's legit, man. I would go back. I would dress appropriately though. So we went during their summer. I think the high was maybe 70, and it was still very breezy and wet and cold. But if I had dressed and brought some layers, I think my experience would be totally different. But fantastic city. Had no clue that they were. I think the ninth largest economy in the world. And
Mhm.
you definitely felt it with the diversity, the food, the entertainment. It was fire. I would go back.
Okay.
Ireland, probably one of those places you could visit once, check it off the bucket list. I may actually go back twice because I want to check out Northern Ireland, where a lot of the Game of Thrones was shot. And they also have black sand beaches. We were more in the southern part of Ireland. So I may have to circle back for 24 or 48 hours to check that out.
Well, I'm half Irish, so well, not half. I'm like a little bit Irish because
I
of
got 1%.
yeah. I mean to say half whatsoever, but Keenan is technically with the two e's is technically a Irish name, but mine's spelled with the one e, so it's like the Hebrew version of it because it's
So
from the
pretty,
Bible. It's
pretty
from like
close to proximity. I can see how we got there.
yeah, it's like the Old Testament. So like I knew what my parents were going for, but it's all good. Um before I mean we've already spoiled who our guest is, but before we get into our guest, really quick, I just want to remind everyone that's watching or that's going to be watching is that I have my tour coming up this fall. Everything's under control. I got 3 dates, well, 3 shows rather. September 14th, I got 2 shows at the Elbow Room in Hartford, Connecticut, 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock p.m. So you can go to my Instagram at Keenan J Floyd, link in the bio. In the link tree, you can get your tickets. And then on January 15th, I will be headlining a show at the St. Mark's Comedy Club in New York City in the East Village. You can go same place, get your tickets there for my New York City folks. All right, now that that's done, Carl Jones, welcome to the Cultured Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. How you feeling, my guy?
Feeling good, man. Thank you for having me.
Man, the
Yeah.
hat is fire.
Oh,
And Malcolm X probably it falls top three movies of all time for me. So I'm pumped that you got that on. Denzel, that whole ensemble.
yes. I love it too. So I was feeling a little militant today. I said, let me rock the Malcolm X hat.
I can see why. I mean, with all these damn current events, folks, assassination attempts, and chickens coming home to roost, I was like, there's a lot of good stuff going on. I mean, I won't say good, but it's a lot of interesting stuff, so to speak. It's just like you we always grew up where they say karma's a bitch, and you put a lot of negative and vitriol and pro gun and pro this and that. It just seems almost inevitable that those type of things come back to you. So Saturday was ironic, but not surprising to me. The coverage and today's announcements of VP stuff, like this election, these next 120, 160 days or so, going to be wilder and wilder. So
Yeah.
get your popcorn ready.
Well, I always hear people say that when a current event like this happens, they wish two things was around to be able to do commentary. The first is Patrice O'Neal. They say, I wonder what Patrice O'Neal will have to say about what's going on. And the second thing is, what would the Boondocks say about what's happening in the world right now? And for those that you don't know, Carl Jones was a writer and executive producer on the Boondocks television series. Is there any time when you see things going on in the news that you go back and you think, man, I wish I had a vehicle to kind of address this? Or are you already working on something that you can kind of get your rocks off when it comes to like the current events?
Well, I say yes to both. Yeah, I'm always, looking every time I see stuff happening in the news. It's yeah, my first thought is like, how do you create an episode around this, or is there a joke here? Because when we were doing the Boondocks, World Star Hip Hop and Vlad TV had just kind of started to buzz, and that became like our morning paper. Like a lot of stuff that inspired episodes came right from World Star Hip Hop. You know what I mean? Because it was like, at the time, it was the only thing that was really like contextualizing like what was happening around the world, and like giving you like a real, candid, view of what's happening like around us at all times. Now it's like everywhere, obviously. And that's the thing, that was a lot of what inspired what we were doing. We were in real time checking the temperature of the world and being able to write from that. You know what I'm saying? And I am still pushing to do stuff in that vein, or at least, another series that could possibly rival that, but it's just really difficult today. It's really difficult. A lot of the networks and studios are nervous as hell. They're very scared. They don't take as many risks, not just because of, cancel culture and all of that stuff, but just because, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the stuff you see getting made in Hollywood is usually reboots or things that, pre-existing brands, or, you know what I mean? Like there's just not a lot of risk being taken, for, to do like anything that's like way too innovative or outside the box or edgy or, ruffles feathers. It's tough.
I had a question just out of curiosity. Like when you look at the content that's out on TV and film right now, like, is there something that's pulling at your heartstrings around like lacking culturally relevant content and commentary in film and TV? Because Boondocks is probably near and dear to probably 95% of like my friend circle and my age group, because it was just like, it was right on time, right on target. So when I started thinking about what we're seeing today, some of the commentary around like some of Tyler Perry's pieces and stuff, like, does that resonate with you, or is that a thing from an EP and writer standpoint?
Yeah, that's why I love social media, man, because some of the best writers I've ever seen are in the comment sections. Like, bro, I'm telling you, I'll see a headline like on Hollywood Unlocked or Baller Report or whatever, and I'll just go straight to the comments, and I'll be there for like an hour, just reading, just laughing, cracking up, man. Like that's the beauty of the internet, right now, is that you get to see so much creativity, man, and so much, and because there's so much competition, you got to really come with a unique perspective on something in order to actually, get it to pierce through all of the noise, right? So with that being said, yeah, like I look forward to when something happens, going to social media and seeing what the world is saying, because, they're just funny, man. The internet's undefeated still.
Undefeated and quick. Some of the memes, some of the sketches, the correlation between photos and fact checking, and then once you get in those comments, like hilarious folks. I feel like as a writer, if I were to put together something like, that's where I would find my writer base. I will go into some comments and figure, seeing who's hot in these comments and start looking at what their activity has been. And they may need to be in the writer's room. There's so much good stuff there. Like, you can go down a rabbit hole real quickly.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, is that how people are finding writers now? Because I know a lot of my friends that are actively working in rooms, they have a big following either on Twitter or on Instagram. And then they end up, they're like, oh, I'm writing on tree now. Is that how is that a way that's kind of being done? Or
yeah, I mean, I think it's a little both, like I think, percentage of the writers are green and have a funny point of view or unique experience. Like I look for different things in writers, not necessarily experience. Like experience is good, but having a unique point of view and something, having a voice or just unique experiences to pull ideas from is almost more valuable. But you are working within a Hollywood paradigm, so like they're putting up a lot of money to make these TV shows and these movies. So a lot of times they want to make sure that there's some writers in the room that have enough experience to make sure that you stay on track with a certain level of quality, yada yada yada. But I personally, like, I'm always looking for writers with no experience at all, but have like something different to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, how did you get into? Well, I guess it's a twofold question, because the question is really, how did you get into entertainment in the first place? Was that always your desire? But specifically, animation as a medium, was it always animation was what you wanted to go for, and you just went for it, or did you enter entertainment with a different objective and then just pivoted? Like, did you grow up a fan of animation, or like how exactly did you get on this path?
Yeah, I grew up a fan of animation as far back as I can remember, and I was also drawing since I could hold a pencil. So animation or being a cartoonist was always a goal of mine since I was a kid. I grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, a really small town. I spent a lot of my younger years like at the height of the crack epidemic. So my neighborhood was definitely not conducive for nurturing like a young artist or a cartoonist or an animator. So I knew I had to get out of the town for a little while to go pursue my dreams. And eventually that's what I did. But my first animation gig was, it was actually developing a cartoon series for Rockefeller Films under Dame Dash. And it was actually Beanie Siegel's brainchild. It was a cartoon called The Playpen. And it was basically the state property crew. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the state property crew that was under Rockefeller, but it was a state property crew as babies in this daycare center that was more like a correctional facility. So, so instead of like nap time, they had lights out. You know what I mean? And they were smuggling cookies like contraband in the nursery and stuff. And so I was developing that, and then Beanie Siegel got arrested for attempted murder. So that killed the cartoon, all puns intended. And at that point, because I was working on that in New York, and then I went back home to North Carolina, and after some hit and miss, some trials and tribulations that I went through going back home and just kind of dealing with the reality that I guess my dream isn't really going to happen, I made a decision just to pack up everything and move out to LA. So oddly enough, the very first day that I'm in LA, I'd never been to LA before, and my ex-wife and I, we were driving down Melrose, and we only went down Melrose because I remember I saw the TV show before, Melrose Place. So I was like, oh, I know that place. Let's turn down Melrose. So we turned down Melrose, and I see Aaron Magruder walking down the sidewalk with a red T-shirt that had Huey on it. And I basically jumped out the car and attacked him. And I was just like, yo. And mind you, there was no TV show at the time. It was just a comic strip, but I was a fan of the comic strip. So, I just started telling them, like, I worked on this Rockefeller thing, and, Beanie Siegel was trying to kill people. And I ended up here in LA. I just gave him my whole story. And I was like, I got artwork, I got drawings, I got this and that. And we exchanged information. I emailed him some of my work, and he took a meeting with me, and the meeting went for like 3 hours. We just hit it off like instantly, and so he offered me a job to help him on the comic strip. So I jumped in first working on the comic strip, but I was still like holding down like a daytime job at this electronics store, So, but I didn't tell Aaron that. So he would call me like, all right, it's time to do the strip. And so I run into the break room, you know what I'm saying? I'm working on the Boondocks comic strip in the break room. And then I go out and help somebody find an extension cord. So it was like, I was doing this for a minute. And then eventually Aaron was like, he was like, what are you doing in between this? And I told him, and he was like, why don't you just come on full time? So I started working on the strip full time, and then the show got picked up shortly after that, and so he brought me on board to work on the show. But when I first started on the show, I was doing art. I was doing like some storyboard revisions, some character designs, and what I'm saying. And I was I didn't have any experience, so I jumped in where I could fit in, and eventually one thing led to another, and I found myself basically in every aspect of the production alongside of Aaron, because I spent so much time with him, especially with the comic strip, that I understood the characters in the show in a way that he needed my help, because we were it was a lot of very specific cultural things that he wanted in the show, and at the time in animation it just wasn't a lot of us, and there wasn't a lot of people that really understood the point of view and the comedy and anime. That was the other thing. So I just kind of climbed my way up the ladder from there, man, and I never looked back.
Man, that's all. Your story resonates with me because a few years back I was working on a pilot that it never got picked up, but I was doing IT at the time, and it was IT and visual effects. So you know how that goes. It's like you have to work 18 hours. So even if I'm like, hey, take an hour to go for lunch and I'm trying to do a meeting, it's still people looking over your shoulder to make sure it's no conflict of interest. So, I mean, it's interesting to see like the sacrifice that a lot of people make to follow their dreams, especially when it comes to like being creative, being black in the creative space. It feels like you always have to have that obligation. I don't know. Did you get encouragement from your family or from your friends when you were pursuing that career, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think once I got out here and I got a job, I got encouragement, what I'm saying, from my mom and family. But, like growing up, like my mom, I don't know, she was always like, if you put that kind of, all the attention, if you put all that energy you put into your drawing, into your schoolwork, you might be something. That was right. My mom. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times I would have to hide drawings when she came into my room or something like that, because she wanted me to focus on school. But I understand why, because I mean, who was making a living doing that? Especially in our community, it was almost non-existent. It was like unrealistic. It's like telling somebody you want to be a unicorn when you grow up. It's like, so there wasn't that much encouragement. But I will say, a lot of people, like, growing up, I was always, drawing pictures on people's jeans and jackets, and what I'm saying, and so like I did think I had something kind of special, and the people in my neighborhood was always really supportive, and even like a couple of like the drug dealers or whatever would kind of nudge me in the right direction and trying to keep me away from the other stuff or whatever. But it wasn't, I like I said, it wasn't still like a realistic goal, until there was actually a check coming through. And then that's when people were like,
that's when people believe you. When the money shows up, that's when they see the vision.
Right.
And you're seeing it more and more in culture. I mean, there's kids where we used to hate on folks for playing video games and stuff. Oh, you're making millions of dollars doing this type of stuff. But there's so many different platforms in which you can be creative, you can exercise your talent and gift. And it's fantastic to hear stories like this. It's like, this is what I was good at. This is what my natural calling was. This is where my skill set lied, and passion, and just keep working it, whether it's, above ground, underground, in your spare time, what have you. But like, you ran after it and kept working at it. And as a result of it, tremendous amount of success, and it's just great to hear those type of stories, because there's so many people who need that extra motivation. That just because the world doesn't see it doesn't mean that it's not possible. It just hasn't been done yet, and I'm the one to do it.
And for all the mothers that keep telling us to work at the post office,
one of them good government jobs with some benefits and stuff.
Yeah, they're always hiring at the post office. Before we get into the movie, just one more thing I want to mention, because not a lot of people talk about this. Young Love, the TV series that was based on Hair Love, which won the Academy Award, I think, at the 2020 Oscars, I believe.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
I think so.
It was a TV show that was released on Max or HBO Max, and you were involved in that as well. How did that come about?
So I was, so I took a meeting with Monkey Paw. It was a general meeting. This was before Hair Love won the Oscar. I met because Matthew Cherry was actually working at Monkey Paw at the time, and the meeting went really well. And he and I, we kept in touch, and he and Monkey Paw were basically rooting for me to get to land a job on Lasso G, because they wanted to work with me, and this seemed like a perfect opportunity for me or whatever. And they were having trouble keeping showrunners, or for whatever reason. So I was up for the job, and Matthew was fighting really hard to get me the showrunner position. But then there was a lot of chefs in the kitchen. So eventually they ended up going with Keenan Ivory Wayans at first. But then things weren't quite working out with Keenan, and I ended up taking over as showrunner at some point. But through that experience on Lasso G, Matthew and I, got really close or whatever. And then Karen Tolliver, who was at Sony Pictures Animation, who was behind, Spider-Verse and a bunch of other cool stuff. I did a meeting with her, and she told me that they were turning Hair Love into an animated series, and wanted to see if I'd be interested. And I was like, of course, because it was such a dope, charming, heart-wrenching film. Of a short film, I just thought I instantly understood why this could be, or how this could be, an animated series. So from there, Matthew and I just started working on developing the idea for it and what the episodes would be like, and it just kind of took off,
Well, I will say it definitely felt like it had your stamp in it too, because going into it, I was expecting it was going to have the emotional tone as the short, because the short's more or less a silent short, but basically in the short, the mother is getting over a cancer diagnosis and recovering from chemo. But then when they get to it, when you start the first episode, it's like they're roasting each other.
Yeah.
They're roasting each other, and they're making jokes about her having cancer. I'm like, yo, I didn't expect this show to be so adult, but I ended up watching all, I think 10 or 12 episodes, and I really enjoyed it. And I was just like, not a lot of people really have. I haven't had conversations about this show a lot with a lot of people. So I also wanted to mention that was also something that you worked on. In.
No, I appreciate it. It was tough because, how do you make cancer funny? Number one, right? But also, Matthew was very intentional about doing a show that felt very real and very honest. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, the young couple in the series, their car, one of the doors doesn't match the color of the car, right? Those little details of a family that's really struggling, trying to keep their head above water. And a young couple raising a child, today in Black America, and just have, dealing with the social things, and, but also chasing their dreams individually as it's just a man and a woman in a relationship, and both having to balance, do this juggling act of paying bills, being there for their child, so he wanted it to really resonate in a very real way, in an authentic way. So we were real intentional about everything. So even down to those roasting sessions or whatever, or seeing a couple interact in a real way, not you know what I'm saying, not in a like a overtly sweet kind of way, or in a way where it's just like, it's just completely like no heart or love between them at all, and they're just firing shots at each other. Like we didn't want to do one extreme or the other. It was we tried to find that sweet spot that felt more real. And like I said, I got to give that credit to Matthew, because he was very, very intentional about it.
Yeah. So if you guys haven't already, go check out Max, and also I think the Boondocks is also on Max.
Mm-hmm.
I believe,
and Black Dynamite.
And Black Dynamite. I love Black Dynamite too, by the way. We could talk about this for days. We should actually change the subject of the episode. But anyway, getting into what we wanted to talk about, The Last Dragon, Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, mind you, is one of your favorite films. Before we get into the conversation, let's check out the trailer.
A martial arts champion in search of the glow. The Last Dragon, directed by Michael Schultz, a Motown Productions picture from TriStar.
So if you didn't know, it's Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, a Motown production, directed by Michael Schultz, who, you know what? I'm a huge fan of Michael Schultz, because Michael Schultz did a bunch of classics. Yes. He did Car Wash.
Coolie High.
Huh?
I said Coolie High.
Coolie High. He actually directed one of my favorite Richard Pryor movies, Bustin' Loose.
Yes, mine too. Yo, yeah. That's one of my favorites.
That's one of my favorite movies. I grew up watching that. So, like, when I saw Michael Schultz directed it, I was like, okay, I'm going to enjoy this. Like,
yeah,
he really he directed another movie. I wrote down, he directed another movie that I directed. Oh no, he directed Carbon Copy. Denzel's first movie. Denzel Washington's first movie, where he plays the white, or he's the white guy's son. So I knew it was going to be, a good movie. I had seen it off and on, before, but sitting down and actually being able to enjoy it. Carl, why is this one of your favorite movies?
Well, I think, first of all, at the time, right, I had never seen anything like that before with Black characters, right? Because it's like, the 80s was a real interesting time, because you had so many great movies that was coming out. You had like Back to the Future, mm-hmm. Airplane, Beetlejuice, you know what I'm saying, Breakfast Club. You had all these like really amazing films, but you rarely saw a Black film that would mix fantasy with, even with the little, with action and Asian culture too, like with the Kung Fu culture. Because at the time, because I grew up watching Kung Fu theater. I was like a big Bruce Lee fan, right? So we didn't have a Bruce Lee, and we didn't have. I mean, you saw some blaxploitation. The blaxploitation era was that was like the closest you got to like seeing like real, badass martial artists that look like us. But this had a fantasy element to it, but then it had a hip hop element to it. The music, the score was crazy. You know what I'm saying? It was just like so many dope elements about it. And it felt like this alternate reality, right? That it was like this weird alternate reality that was believable though. It's like I wanted to go to this place. So there's a lot of reasons why I think it resonated with me so much at the time. But aside from that, I thought the story was really strong. It was a real hero's journey about a kid who came from the hood and had, didn't necessarily have the tools to be a hero, but he found a way to reach from deep inside of him and bring out the glow and save the day. Like it was aspirational, you know what I'm saying? It was feel good. And it was just dope, man.
He was definitely different. Like that's one of the aspects that I liked about the story, was that he was so focused on his journey that to everyone else he was kind of strange, right? Which is a lot. is a lot of it's a story that a lot of young black kids can relate to because I keep hearing stories of kids that grew up in the hood, but they had like different interests, right?
Yes.
So it's like then they had to deal with people clowning them and all that stuff. But like a movie like this kind of showed like the perseverance because you have to admit when you watch the movie, Bruce Leroy is strange. Like he's a strange kid.
Yeah.
He just be standing on the corner just looking into space and stuff, right? So it's like I get it. I get how people might be like, okay, this guy's a little off. But with the perseverance, you cherished his story. You cherish what he was what's the word? What he was pursuing, right?
It was a journey, and you had a gentle man that didn't really have like the harsh, thuggish, ruggish type presentation, but like he was highly trained with the hands and the feet, and said, "Whoever wants some can get some, but I'm gonna try to keep it cool, right?" And like growing up, I remember my mom always used to tell me that her dad told her, "It's like don't go around breaking bad, just be bad enough to keep the bad off you." And that was him, and Leroy, he was just like, listen, you don't want these problems. I'm not trying to lay these hands on you, but if we got to, you can get it too. And I'm here for it. And he was chivalrous and he was kind and soft-spoken. And I think these are elements that are important in our culture that oftentimes are usually frowned upon or told he too sassy or too soft or a little punk. And even throughout the dialogue throughout the film, you were a little sissy, a little punk ass sissy, and you saw him just kind of work through that and being himself, and the underlying message of that the master is within you, and you got to come into owning that space. So I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Starting off at the top, it's a very because I'm a big Spike Lee fan. So like the first thing I noticed that when they did the opening credits when he's doing his training, I'm like, this is to Kung Fu that Rosie Perez was to dancing and Do the Right Thing. Like it's a very similar. It's setting the tone of this is a dance that this guy is doing, and he doesn't want to use it often. And then of course you meet the Mr. Miyagi type. You meet his master, who's not really his master, but But what's funny is if you've lived in New York, any point in your life, the interactions between Black people and Asian people, Chinese specifically, is very accurate in this movie.
Yeah.
It has such a New York feeling that after his master says, I'm not your master anymore, I was expecting him to be like, do you want some shrimp fried rice and some chicken wings? like it just had that because it wasn't Mr. Miyagi. I mean, it wasn't I give you wisdom. It was very much like, yo, it's over.
We're done here.
Do you have like a favorite character in this movie, Carl, that you really connected with? Was it Bruce Leroy or was it anybody else?
Sho-nuff. It was definitely Sho-nuff. Like
Why?
Well, because he was like a Marvel villain, but in our world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he wore shoulder pads. He was like
football shoulder pads.
It's like, and he would walk in a movie theater like he owned it with his crew. Like it was just like he was just a dope character. But I like Richie too. Richie was a cool character too. He was funny, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And he was just like he was a good contrast with Bruce Leroy. They were like a really good older brother and younger brother combo,
Yeah. The weird thing about this, sorry, Kenny, go ahead.
No, you good. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, looking at Sho-nuff, I was just like, I kept hearing and seeing Dion Cole every time.
That's what I said.
I'm like, this is kind of wild. And when I think, what was it, The Harder They Fall, when he was with Regina King and
yeah,
I was just like, yo, this is him. Like this is like his voice, his kind of mannerisms, and like him in that stage. I was like, man, this is screaming Deion Cole. Then I had to Google it to make sure I wasn't tripping. Like this time frame got to be off. It's definitely not him. Like let me move past. But like that just kept screaming Deion Cole the entire time for me.
Somebody approached me about doing an animated Last Dragon at one point in time. It never went anywhere. But at some point in time they were thinking about it, and I want to say Sam Jackson was involved at the time, but there was some talk. There was some very serious discussions about doing something animated with it.
Carl, we might need to talk. we might need to talk. Let's
okay.
So this is the aspect that I focus on because I thought about, and I don't know if I should say this on the pod because I think it's a good idea, but I'll say it. Watching the movie, I wanted to know the backstory of Sho-nuff.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to know the backstory of Sho-nuff because we never, which back in the 80s, villains were just villains. Like we didn't have to feel any empathy for them. We just knew they were the bad guys. Like when Sho-nuff especially busted up the green pizza place, I was like, oh, he's gonna have to go. He got to go. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so I didn't really care about caring about him, but like at the same time, in the back of my mind, I was like, why is he so angry?
Yeah, I agree. And you know what's interesting, man? What's interesting about what you said is there's a common note that a lot of writers get in Hollywood about likability. You know, when you have characters, mainly main characters. Usually, villains. A lot of times, people are okay with them being evil for the sake of evil. I'm not a big fan of that. I think giving every character motivation is important. But when you start thinking about what attracts you to watch or what makes you want to see a character or learn more about them, it's not always because they're good. And it's not always because you actually have empathy for them. It may be that you're just trying to understand them, right? So I think I agree with you. Like, I think there's a lot of great characters that you may not necessarily have empathy for right away, but there's enough there for you to understand that this is somebody who made a bunch of bad decisions or at some point in their life maybe took a different path, right? And so you're curious to know why, and then maybe you could find some empathy for that character at some point, but that's not necessarily what it takes in order for you to, be lured into a character's journey. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, it's like the scene when he goes into Magic Johnson Theater and they're watching Enter the Dragon, right? I think it was Enter the Dragon. It was Bruce. I believe it was Enter the Dragon.
It was.
And he walks in and he's basically like, "This theater's mine," and then he's like, people are just like, "Okay, have a seat."
Get out the way. Get out the way. Move it.
Nobody's stopping you from enjoying the movie. Like, so the fact that he's like, "Do you want everyone to leave?" Because then he gets in the front of the theater and he's like, "If you guys don't think I'm a master, come and challenge me." And it's like, dude, we're trying to watch the movie. What? Why are you doing this? And of course, there's a beef specifically that he has with Bruce Leroy that they don't explain outside of Bruce Leroy is on his way to becoming a kung fu master.
Right.
And he feels threatened by that. Right.
Yeah.
So Bruce Leroy's sitting there like, I think Bruce Leroy looks like Michael Jackson. That's my opinion. I think he looks like Thriller Michael Jackson. I don't think it was an accident that they had him in the movie theater eating popcorn, but this time with chopsticks, so we don't confuse the two. And even the angle of him eating popcorn is the same angle from the Thriller video. That's all I'm saying.
And similar voice too.
Similar voice, similar skin tone, face structure, all that stuff, right? A part of me was like, Barry probably tried to get Michael Jackson to do this movie, and he said no. But yeah, but he's doing the whole thing where he's like, you can get these hands, but I'm not going to use them in this. I'm not going to waste these moves, my skills indiscriminately, right? So Sho-nuff is kicking everybody and throwing people down and kicking people's kids' popcorn out of their hands. They're picking up children and shaking them for some reason.
Oh, it's hilarious.
And then
that whole scene was wild. I mean, like, we got exposed to a transgender person. We had halter tops getting into fights and stuff. Like, people jumping off the rafters. Like, it was wild, man.
Right.
Like,
but it is funny that you brought that up because no one was challenging whether or not it's his movie theater or he had control over it at all. It was that was never even up for discussion. But he was looking for the smoke. Like he wanted. Yeah. It was really interesting thinking back. Like it's like he was projecting a lot.
That's why I'm saying we need to figure out what the backstory is of Bruce Leroy, because he's just, I mean, not Bruce Leroy, but Sho-nuff, because he's just walking in just saying, "Hey."
You guys think I'm not bad?
Yeah.
It's like,
what they said, sit down, you string bean, Rick James looking fool.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to Bruce Leroy and he just leaves. He just leaves the theater. Now, I was surprised that Bruce Leroy was again roasted at the beginning of the movie when he was walking around dressed like an Asian guy, because he's clearly black.
Yeah.
So for him to walk around Harlem in the like, I don't know what the outfit's called, but like the kung fu outfit and the big hat, and he's just walking around and nobody's roasting him. I'm just like, I don't know if I believe that part of the movie, but
well, I'm trying to think like during that time, because I didn't grow up in Harlem, but I know, well, we were wearing the shoes for sure. We was wearing the karate shoes. I don't know about the whole get up. You know what I'm saying? Maybe some pants. Like if you would actually like a white belt or a brown belt, you was taking some karate classes. But yeah, he had the whole ensemble. Yeah, that would have been a little weird.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was just a big fan of kung fu. That's almost,
yeah.
I don't know. But so after that, we basically cut to the reason that Motown made this movie in the first place, to show off their music artist. And we have like I mean, I'm glad how they like wrote it into a plot that Vanity, what was her name? Laura Charles. She's like a VJ. She was like a VJ.
Yeah.
So basically her job was to play music videos. So it's like, okay, now we're going to like do 15, 20 minutes of Motown upcoming
musical.
Right.
Musical, which I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I thought it was cheesy. But one thing about Laura Vanity's position is like she exemplifies soft feminine energy. And that's something that I love seeing on TV and on screen in general. And like just the whole like, all right, we moved past, all right, he done whooped ass, hailed her cab, then disappeared, and your whole gold medallion thing. All right, we got a little Cinderella thing going on. But like moving forward, she's just like, I want to do something nice for you. Come here. Let me put on this video display of Bruce Lee. Like, I know this is something that's important to you. And it builds up to this kiss scene where she's ready to kiss him. And then like that whole thing I thought was tastefully done. And the black woman being represented within that soft feminine energy. I always love to see that on film. So I enjoyed that part and it stood out to me. I was just like, I would like somebody to do something kind of like that for me.
But you got beat up.
You got to whoop ass. Now I don't know where that
got beat up six Italians. trying to
come from random street and a black man hailing a cab. I was just like, all right, we hadn't connected, but like Eddie didn't pay for it. Which nowadays, if you're in the comment section, he would have been a cheat. mofo and been trashed on Twitter because he didn't pay for the cab after hailing it and kicking ass. Black men ain't shit.
So here's my question. How come Mr. Tibbs is always one of the villains? Like when it's like a bunch of white villains, you have the diversity hire, and he gets his ass kicked every time. In Die Hard, you have the computer guy, and there was another, I can't think of the movie, but there's another movie where it's like a whole bunch of white guys, and you have this one. I call him the January 6th Negro. You know what I mean? Where it's like a bunch of white people, and then you see the one brother like in the middle of everybody, and you're like, "What are you doing there?
Are you okay?"
Right.
That's what this guy was. I called him Mr. Tibbs because he was wearing a suit.
Yeah.
And trying. He's like he didn't even know kung fu.
No. Oh man, that's
he
hilarious.
just stood there and took it to the face.
Right.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. Oh man.
You know what? Something that I clearly missed. Probably too young, I guess, when I first saw this. But we had some cameos. We had Cole for Martin was at the pizza.
Oh, that's right.
shop.
That's right.
Yeah.
Keisha Knight Pulliam. Rudy was baby sis.
Yeah.
That I was just like, yo, she been working for a long time, son. Like between him, Cole as Cockroach, Cole. What's Cole's real name?
Carl
Payne.
Carl Payne.
Yeah. There we go. I should give him some more credit. But I just appreciated those little cameos popping up. I was like, oh, there we go.
William H. Macy was in it too.
Yeah.
He was in it. He was one of the he was one of Vanity's VJ assistants at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. Now, see, Barry Gordy put a lot of people on. Good for him.
Yeah, he did. I mean, yeah, and Charles Schultz. Michael Schultz too. Like, you definitely got to give him his credit. You know.
Yeah.
Like, but he's always been at the forefront of culture, man. Like pushing things forward in a different way. You know.
Did you see that Netflix documentary? Is This Black Enough?
I don't think so.
It's about blaxploitation movies, the history of not necessarily blaxploitation movies. Blaxploitation is a large part in it, but they interview Michael Schultz and they talked about all the movies that he made. It's actually really good. It's on Netflix. It's called. Yeah, it's
great.
Called, if not, I'll like text it to you or something. But like, it's This Black Enough, I think is what it's called. Angela, the white girl, Angela Verrocco.
Yeah.
Now, was Faith Prince an actress or was she a singer back in the day? She was an actress, right? Faith Prince, the woman that played her.
I didn't know it.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't mean either.
At first, I was trying to see if she was like a Cyndi Lauper or Stevie Nicks or somebody like that. Like I was like, is this somebody that like I'm supposed to know?
Actress and singer.
Okay. Yeah, I had never.
Tony Award winner.
Academy Award winner.
Really?
Tony.
Oh, Tony. Oh.
Tony Award winner. Okay. So she's like
yeah, because what did she do? I don't remember seeing her again. Actually,
it just looks like Broadway.
I could see that because that's how she came across in the movie. Like she was playing to the back of the room. I could definitely see that. I did feel bad for her though because she didn't deserve to be treated like that. Like again, it's another villain. It's another villain that I don't understand why he's angry. Eddie, Arcadian. I didn't understand why he was angry.
He just wanted to be the bad guy, the mean guy.
he was like the white hustling flow. He was like, oh, I need to get this tape played.
Right.
That's it. You're like, what? You're like, what is he trying to do? He's trying to get her music video played on TV.
Yeah.
Shit. That's not, and what's funny is they kidnap Laura Charles. They kidnap her to bring her to his house to watch the music video.
Yeah, that was wild.
That's the only way they could have got that exposure. You had to kidnap her.
I mean, not go down to the studio and talk to her or set up a meeting. They had to kidnap her and then say, you know what, you're gonna watch it. And then it says, if you don't play this, I'll kill you.
That was kind of wild.
And then she goes, of course not. I mean, putting it on the air is technically free. I mean, it does cost money, but it's technically free. You know, like airtime don't really cost you that much back in the 80s, right?
Right.
And you know, Angela was the one that they were trying to put on. It wasn't him.
Right. What about what's his name? Johnny Vu? I mean, no, Johnny Yu, right? This Leroy's friend, the Asian guy
that was in the dojo. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was an interesting character too. You know what I mean? Like it was funny because he was like blacker than Leroy. he was like a little more hood than Leroy was.
So that's an interesting theme I thought of in this movie, was the theme of identity. Because Johnny Yu was a little bit more charismatic with the ladies. He was a little bit more down. He was a little bit more worldly, if you will. And then even that scene where Leroy's going to look for the master, and it's the three Chinese guys, but they're all acting quote unquote black.
Yeah. Shooting dice.
Yeah, and basically Leroy, and again, it's that theme of Leroy's like, is Leroy acting Asian in the movie? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Exactly.
Is Leroy acting Asian and then they're acting black?
Little role reversal ended up in some hot scotch dice.
Yeah, and then Leroy does the Hollywood shuffle blackness. He's like, yeah, jive turkeys, what's up? And
right.
He's like, yeah, this is how we do it in the hood. And it's like, this is like an episode of The Cosby Show when Theo gets hemmed up by a gang and has to survive. That's like what this is. What's happening? He's doing the head bob and all that stuff when he's walking. You know us black folks.
Because didn't Johnny Yu, he have to kind of pretend like he knew karate or something at one point, like when he got surrounded. I think he could fight, but like he wasn't like that good.
He wasn't that sweet at it. Yeah.
But he put on the whole Bruce Lee thing.
Like very, very vocal with it, as if he's watched a few films. But like when it showed up, he got a couple licks off at the end, which helped. You know, at the very end where he was scrapping, he laid a couple of people out and kind of surprised himself. But it was definitely very imposter-esque. It's just like, all right, what can I mimic here to scare him off? But nobody was backing down, man.
Well, that scene with Sho-nuff showed up to the dojo, and like he's the first one, and Bruce Leroy's like, hey guys, let's just all be cool. And he's like, no, we can't. And it's almost like it was like a kung fu film, because he was like moving his arms and like his mouth wasn't matching the dialogue exactly. I will say this. We will never understand why women like who they like. But I did find it interesting, and it's interesting how they used to write movies like when it was like nerdy black guys back in the day, where it would be like he would be over here doing whatever, and then the prettiest girl just found him irresistibly sexy, and he's like oblivious.
Right.
he's like oblivious that women want him. It's like now when you hear like blurs talking of like girls didn't like me because I like anime, and he's like one of those type of dudes where he's not paying attention, and then he gets older. He's like, yeah, girls didn't really fuck with me because I was in the kung fu movies. Like, it's like, no, dude, you just never looked over your shoulder. Like, it's that's all that happened. So, like, when Vanity or Laura Charles first sees Bruce Leroy, she's like smitten immediately. And he doesn't even do anything at first. He's just
just walking through all like the paparazzi and everything, and the sign, and she's getting in the car, locking eyes, gazing at him. You're just like, oh, okay, just cruising through life. Like, this fine ass woman isn't staring me down. Like, it was wild, man.
Then he saves her. Then we have no inclination. We have no inclination that he's really acknowledged her in that way in the movie at all. Until they're in the car, they're driving, and he's trying to be like, oh, well, my friend says. And she's like, Bruce Leroy, you don't have friends. she knows. She's like, and then she says to him, she says, I can show you moves. And he's like, it's my friend that you should show moves to. It's like, nigga, what?
My friend.
Like, you don't even have to try. She just told you. She's like, yeah, when this is over, let's go back to my place.
Yeah.
And I'll like, go ahead, Carl.
No, well, I mean, that was the interesting thing, right? It was like it was a different look at masculinity, right? Especially for that era, like, you know, because he definitely wasn't feminine, right? Like you know, and he was kicking ass, and he was very, you know, but it was like he was more like an alien, like he didn't understand what it meant to be in a relationship versus him not being masculine, you know.
Well, you start noticing the difference when he was hanging out with his younger brother. And again, the way and maybe my mind is kind of mean, but my interpretation that when what was his brother's name? Richie,
yeah.
As soon as Richie started, I'm like, I know he introduces him as the special needs brother. It's like, this is my special needs brother, Bruce Leroy. He thinks he's a kung fu master,
right?
But I'm Richie. I totally get down with the hose. It's nice to meet you. Like, that's because you could tell like the brotherly thing. Like, Bruce Leroy speaks in complete sentences. He's like, I do not want to watch television. And then Richie's like, man, get out of here, fortune cookie. Like,
yeah.
Man, if you don't get out my face chopsticks, like, it's, you know.
He said, what's good with all that kung fu job if you can't even use it? You just a coward. Why don't you go somewhere and meditate on that shit?
Yeah, like he's like going in. And I said, finally, someone in this movie is actually from New York. Because if it would have been real life back in the 80s and 90s, that would have been on the subway. That would have been everybody on the subway on his way home. It's funny too when you also, Carl, you're talking about like masculinity and the talk that we talk about, like the hypersexualization of black children, like black boys and black girls. And you kind of see that in movies too, because even with Richie's like, I'm gonna get Vanity. Like, he's talking like
girl.
He's a kid.
Yeah, he's a child, and he's like, I'm going to get Laura. I'm gonna go. He's like going to where she works in the intention of getting with her, right? And that's always like an interesting. I mean, I guess it's also like times have changed, but then the question is, has times really changed?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I just, for some reason, well, at that period of time, it was just normalized. Like, because, you know, you just saw, like, if it was the other way around, it would have been weird, right? Like, I'm saying, I mean, if it wasn't a boy, you know, being hypersexual towards an older woman, or if it was, you know, the opposite, it would be wrong. But back then, there was something, I don't know, it's just where we were as a culture. Like, introducing young boys into like, their sexuality with older women. Because even we look at like Weird Science, right? I mean, they were. I mean, I guess they were like teens or whatever, but you would see that. I mean, they would. I mean, honestly, like even in the sitcoms and stuff, like with like Different Strokes and stuff like that, like you would see like the kids making passes at the older girls or the older women, but it was just like a part of the culture at the time. I mean, now I think there's still a lot of hypersexuality, but there's definitely way more sensitivity to it because I think, you know what I'm saying? I think, people are now trying to find a way to kind of like get the pendulum to swing the other way, but yeah, I think it's just we kind of were conditioned just to accept that that's a norm,
Well, they were talking. Now they've recently started talking about that movie Blank Check. Have you guys seen Blank Check?
Nah.
It was a Disney movie about a kid that ended up. Someone gave him a blank check and he wrote like $2 million or something on it. So it was a kid that got rich. And then at the end of the movie, there was like an FBI agent who's a woman, and she ended up like kissing him at the end of the movie. This was a Disney movie, and this came out like in '94, I think. And now people are starting to be like, "Oh, there's a Disney movie where a grown woman's like kissing a kid on the lips."
Like this too much.
Yeah, they're like, "Yo, like we need to." So I think it is changed, but I did find that interesting how it was like a normal thing for him to be like, I'm going to go get my sweetie pie.
Yeah.
And then him being jealous. Like he actually told his brother, Bruce Leroy, he's like, I can teach you something about women or whatever. And it's like, I think we need to sit down and have a talk with somebody. Like
now, I think we're still like randomly talking about Richie. Like one of my favorite parts was like they were bound up while they were doing the whole setup, waiting for Leroy to get there. But then at the very end, he just break dances his way out of the shackles, and I was just like, dude, what the heck is this? But like he just slid out of him so smooth and like a full like. It had to be at least 10 seconds on the screen of him swerving out of this. I just started laughing immediately when I saw it.
So then we get to the final fight. After that, after they escape, they get to the final fight in the warehouse, of course. And we see, and this is why, Carl, we got to do a Shogun of Harlem prequel, because Sho-nuff has the glow. Yeah. He has the red glow, and we don't know how he got it. I mean, and for a second, I was like, Sho-nuff is the master. Like,
right,
he is.
It's a good point. Yeah, we gotta figure that out. I think you got something there.
Yeah, because it's like he became the master, but somehow he got corrupted. Something happened where he's been corrupted that now he's using his power for bad, right?
Yeah, it's like the saying absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So maybe he did start out like, somewhat of like a young Bruce Leroy, or at least a kid that, was being picked on or bullied, but when he got the glow, he made the wrong decision on how to use it, versus, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And maybe that's why the glow is red, which is a visual tool for bad, right?
Right, exactly.
I did dig the way they did the special effects. I mean, I did like how they were cartoony. I really like that. Like, I think it added like a fantasy element. It added a product of its time element to the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, like with the tracers that they were using.
The tracers that they did, the Tron animation that they did.
Yeah.
And how did Bruce Leroy get the glow again? I don't remember. There was something.
Yeah, they just came. What? Oh, he had a like a reminiscent type of, all right, I'm no longer your master. The flashback of his sensei saying, I'm not your master anymore. Like, you need to go find it. I think even mentioned something like it's within, and then he does the whole block of the fist, and then he gets his glove, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah, it seemed like it was like a power that apparently is in all of us, but you have to unlock it, right? Like that was the idea, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. So he has the glow. What happened to Bruce Leroy? I mean, not Bruce Leroy. It's just Sho-nuff. Did he just get arrested? What happened? Because nobody died at the end of the movie.
No, he just got kicked to the wall.
Got beat up.
Yeah, he just got beat up, and he lives.
Another message: keep the guns down. You win some, you lose some, but you live to fight another day.
You live to fight another day. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I did. Very good choice, Carl. Thank you for sending it as one of the choices. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Yes, that's one of my favorites. I put it's The Last Dragon and Trading Places. I put right next to it. That's another one of my favorites.
We're gonna have to have you back to talk about Trading Places.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm on an Eddie Murphy kick. I mean, we might have to have a conversation about Eddie Murphy in general because he's come out with like a couple movies recently.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I dug The Last Dragon. What's your final thoughts on The Last Dragon, Jade?
Cool. I think it was hotter, of course, in the 80s. The 80s as an adult, looking at it, like I wasn't an adult, I was a kid, but like looking back on it, it was just a weird time. Lots of bedazzled, leather, cutoffs, big hair, like pop music. It was just like, I'm more like, all right, give me the 90s, but that was kind of my era. But like, I appreciate like the 70s. So like, I don't know, that whole 80s was a little blur for me.
Cocaine gave us a lot of great entertainment in the 80s. That Hollywood cocaine, man.
Yeah, hell of a drug.
Now we're creating things at Ritalin and Adderall. That's what. Any final thoughts, Carl, on The Last Dragon?
I'm just rest in peace, Sho-nuff. You know, or that's his. It's not his real name. I think it's Julius Curry. Was his real name.
Julius Curry. Yep.
Yeah. And yeah, I thought it was an amazing movie, amazing time period. You know, it definitely inspired a lot. I mean, you know, we even with Boondocks, like we would reference, you know, some of that stuff, like with you know, Bushido Brown, or like when we would do, you know, like you know, some of the fight sequences and stuff, like we would always tap into that, like, you know, that blaxploitation era, or just an early era of filmmaking where we saw Black people actually doing karate, you know. So yeah, it's always like a big inspiration and a love of mine.
Before we roll, tell the audience, is there anything that you want them to know that you're working on, what they should know about you, anything about your personal brand, your image, anything that you want to share and folks to know? Definitely want to give you an opportunity to share that, put that out in the atmosphere.
Oh, thank you. No, we got I personally have a handful of projects that I'm working on and developing, and just can't really speak on them too much. But we launched this company, Martian Blueberry, at the start of the pandemic. It's an animation company, or animation-centric creative agency, we like to say. So if you get a chance, go on Instagram at We Are Martian B, and check out some of the cool things that we're doing. We got some stuff in development. We got some collaborations coming up with some really great partners. We just did a project with Walmart called League of Black and Unlimited Dads, which is kind of like The Incredibles, but with Black fathers. You know, thank you. So we got a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline. So be on the lookout for Martian Blueberry projects, and check us out and follow us on Instagram.
Appreciate that. That was it for me. You can see me on Instagram at JBrandon, and we'll keep it moving, man.
Oh, I just realized that my microphone was on mute because I said, "Hey, how about you, Jade?" And then like you just so my bad. You want to do it again? Or are you good?
No, I'm good.
So,
I'll see you out in these streets. I'm about to turn 40, yo. I'm getting old. It's happening. I feel it in my hips and my joints, and here we are, man.
Happy birthday.
early birthday.
Early
I
birthday.
appreciate it. You got a birthday coming up too. We're like a day apart, right? You the 21st?
21st.
I'm the 22nd. See, there we go.
Yeah. All right. So not only is my birthday coming up, but also in September again, I got 3 shows. 2
Tell
shows.
them you working, Keenan. Tell them you working.
Yeah, 3 shows. Headlining doing my hour because I'm preparing to record an album/special. So you guys can go to my link tree. I got 2 shows in Hartford, Connecticut, West Hartford, Connecticut, at the Elbow Room, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening. And on Sunday, for people that are in New York City, I'm going to be headlining at St. Mark's Comedy Club at 7 o'clock. It's in the West Village. Where I'm working on more dates. So I'm going to keep you guys, posted. But if you're in a particular city and you want to come see me, if you're a fan of the podcast, you want to come see me, send me those dates or send me your city rather, and then we can make it happen. So, Carl, thank you so much for joining us on this. This was a great episode. I really, really enjoyed this. I really, 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 really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome.
And if there's nothing else, everyone that's watching, thank you so much for joining us as well. Make sure you hit that like button for the algorithm. Make sure you leave a comment. And also subscribe to our channel and hit that bell for notifications so that you can find out when more content from Kultur'd Podcast is dropping. So thank you so much for joining us, and you guys have a good evening.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Peace.